So good morning, everybody. It's great to see you back here for day 2 of this assembly dedicated to gender and sexual orientation. So as you saw yesterday, we were looking to have a better understanding of what these concepts are and how they can impact us. And we also spent some time dreaming, not only talking about the realities we know and have heard of, but also dreaming of a better world as relates to gender and sexual orientation in our institutions. Today, we're going to look a little further about how we can both support each other and make sure that our institutions offer adequate tools to cope with issues as they arise in relation to gender. And we are also, of course, at the end of the day, going to look to develop some statements, which will, in fact, which you will then vote on, but which will be part of the final outcomes of the project. So just by way of a reminder, our project is looking to help higher music education institutions to develop policies in these areas. So we're going to start with a little exercise in which you will be in groups of 3 or 4, not with people from the same institution, presumably. And we're going to ask each of you to share a story that is either a personal story, something that happened to you, or of which you have knowledge. I suppose you could also invent one, that has to do with this topic. And the other members of your group are there to listen. And each of you has 5 minutes to tell your story and to be listened to. And then at the conclusion, when each of you has told your story and been listened to, we're also going to suggest that you consider creating a group on WhatsApp or on Slack to check in from time to time and to support each other if need be. So that's going to be our first exercise, and I just want to make sure that that's clear. So we have 20 minutes for the exercise. There'll be 3 or 4 of you in your group. You each share a story. And the other members of the group listen, but they don't intervene. They're not there to tell you what you did right or what you did wrong or what should have happened or what shouldn't have happened. This is purely about listening. And then if you want, explore the idea of creating a group to support each other in the future. And we will come back after that to the plenary. So we will see you in 20 minutes. Thank you. So welcome back, everybody. And we hope that this was an inspiring moment of sharing amongst you. Now we are going to move from the personal to the institutional and look at how our institutions can develop policies and an academic environment which is supportive in the regard of gender and sexual orientation. But before so, we have a small game. I'm going to call it a game. It's a guessing game. And you're going to have 10 minutes to complete a poll in which you will be given 5 little anecdotes, 5 little stories. Each story is 2 sentences long. And your job is to guess the gender of the person in the story. So we're giving you 10 minutes for this. And when we come back, we'll look at the results. Have fun. And you will find this poll in the chat right now. So welcome back. And we hope that this was an interesting exercise. We're going to share the screen. Esther's going to share her screen to see how you responded. So as you can imagine, there is no right or wrong answer. But the idea is that here we get a sense of how we have ingrained responses, and we just immediately imagine that it's one gender or another. So in the first case, there's every option is put out there, with probably more suggesting a male teacher and a female student. And you can see that here. In the second case, a singer leaves the rehearsal room abruptly due to not getting all the attention during a rehearsal. We have a lot of different answers here, but we want to share the answer, which is diva a gender, which we particularly like. And another person wrote male tenor, which is somewhat amusing. And then we have the story about the conducting teacher making a student's life miserable. So here too, we have actually a pretty good balance between male, female, female, male, male, male. But what we did notice was in no case did anybody suggest that the conducting teacher was female and that the person being made miserable was female. So that's just an interesting observation. In the case of the head of the orchestra, who's fired by the director of the college for not agreeing to be manipulated into choosing a particular student for a concerto solo, the gender of the director, this also seems to be a mixed bag. So yes, I don't think there's any answer here. The story of our harp player who's asked, "You're so small, why don't you play the piccolo?" While most people say it's probably a woman, it also is obviously, there are answers where it could be a man. So there's also no right or wrong answer to this. And finally, a singer is told to take criticism and stop crying in a performance class. And here again, we have mixed results with the answer we'd like to highlight, which is anyone can cry. So this is obviously not a scientific piece of research. It's just an opportunity to look at how we maybe already have preset ideas about situations for which we have no real information. But right now we're going to move into the question of how we work in our institutions and what happens when we are observing or have knowledge of inappropriate behavior of some kind. What can we do as bystanders, or what can the system do? And so in this particular exercise, you are going to work with a member of the Assembly Working Group around one story. And you will ask yourselves the question, how do I respond as somebody who has information about this story as a bystander? What do I need to be able to do to help this person? What should the institution provide? And perhaps I could have helped this person if certain policies were in place, etc. And for this, you will be using a toolbox, which we have indicated in the brief you received, but it will be also highlighted in the chat box. So for now, I invite you to join your separate groups with members of the Assembly Working Group, and you will listen to the story, and then you will share how you would have responded and what might need to be in place to make an appropriate response. And you will look to see if there are suggestions that could be helpful in this toolbox. And this exercise is going to be for 45 minutes in all. So Barbara is putting you into new groups, and we will see you back in 45 minutes. Thank you. Everybody, I hope that this has been an interesting session, and that the stories that we shared, the 3 different stories, open doors to both reflecting on what you might do and what your institution might do and what tools might be available. I'm going to ask each of the working group members to share maybe 3 key points that they take away from your discussion. And I'm going to start with Constance.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen. Well, we had a wonderful discussion. Very much. Thank you very much to all my participants in my group. We had a story about the double bass player who, a female double bass player who is smaller than the others, and stopped the musical career because the technique wouldn't work by the teacher. And we had a very wide discussion about that. It's not as really a gender problem, but it's a problem of the way of teaching. And so we had many good ideas what to do as a bystander. And the first idea is always just talk to each other. And we came into really good thoughts about why this is so difficult, and about the insecurities of all our teachers because they are musicians, and they experience a lot of things in their own career, which perhaps make them vulnerable and difficult to just talk about things. And we had wonderful examples of how it could work just to go to a colleague and ask for help, because you know that you're a good teacher, but there your experience ends and you really need advice of someone else, and that this really needs to have a very self-confident approach in teaching. And we looked into the toolbox, and it was very inspiring for our talks. So I think I stop here. Thank you very much to my group again. Sorry, one last thing that really touched me. We had a student in our group, and she said, she never thought about teachers being insecure. That's new to her. And I think that was a good moment for all of us. Thanks.
Gretchen, maybe I can be the next one, because we had the same story in the...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so thanks to my participants. We also had a story of a double bass student, but we haven't observed it only as a female student. We were thinking also maybe it's a male student who is a little bit smaller and has the same issue. So what we came basically to some same conclusions as you, Constance, but we also had a very good suggestion of the importance of entrance examinations, and trying to see how to help the potential student and who would be the best teacher for a particular student. So if you don't have a good lineup of teachers within your institution for a certain instrument, you need to be able to find a guest expert for a certain student. So that was one of the suggestions. Also, it was interesting to hear that a teacher who are a majority needs to be aware of that he is in the majority. And also we were talking a lot about the importance of creating subjects and courses that are obligatory for all teachers who are going to teach in a certain institution. Because even if those courses exist and they are not obligatory, a lot of people do not want to do it. So that was also one of the suggestions. And also we were talking about creating some kind of networks of care, especially for example, even for teachers. So maybe making some days at the university when different teachers from the same instruments are teaching whole classes of students from other teachers. So a student can meet different techniques maybe. and also maybe some kind of creating some kind of support in a way that a student can click on alarm button on a website and contact someone who can help to help him or her to get care for its problem. So basically, this in short.
Thank you, Anna. So now I'm going to ask first Carolina and then Megan to share their responses to the story that they had.
Okay. We agreed, yes, we agreed with Pavel that he will present that, so I can do it, or Pavel can do it.
Yeah, I can talk. So we had an example of a trombonist, I think, that was hiding his sexuality, and while playing in an orchestra, he came out, and because of stupid jokes of his colleagues, finally he couldn't handle the situation, and he resigned from the job and left the orchestra. And we had a really nice discussion about handling such a situations in our organizations, and about the sensitivity of these situations and what you can do with it with not harming the person even more. And I think that we came up to the conclusion that education is the most important, making a lot of like obligatory seminars before like preventing these situations, and as well having a very clear regulations and policies, and these policies should be translated to any language to whom it may concern. Same moment, they should be super simple to understand, because often they are written in such a way that there is a regulation and there is a policy, but no one really knows what does it mean. So it should be very simple. And yeah, these regulations that can prevent the situation that the authorities don't believe or just don't find something as a problem. And we had a really nice example of a guy being fired just because of the regulation, because no one found it as a problem, if I understood right, but the regulation recognized it as a problem, and he was fired. Yeah, I guess that's most what we talk about.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. So Megan, would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, so obviously our story was the same. So the first thing that came up was using humor and saying that, oh, it was just a joke, like that mindset needs to be changed. So we said that we would need a clearer code of conduct regarding this area of, oh, it was just a joke. And this code of conduct needs to be accessible. So that's something that was very important in our group. We discussed what the victim would need. So they would need mental health aid, a psychologist, and a safe space to make a complaint and discuss what they need. And we also thought it would be helpful that within the orchestra that there's someone to go to ask for help before going to management and making a formal complaint. So a point of contact before making it very, very official. We talked about the bystander a lot, and we again said the code of conduct needs to be very clearly in place to remind us of what is right and wrong. We also said that the bully, the person who is causing these problems, needs to learn their lesson, and maybe a psychologist for them to talk to about why they're doing this in the first place is important so it doesn't happen again. And I'll just say one more thing. Anne Knack came up with a really interesting point. She said there's this 4D method, which is direct action, distract, delegate, delay. So that basically means you start the conversation you start with direct action to make the complaint. Then you talk to the bully to stop them from hurting this person, get help. And if it's a dangerous situation, walk away and get the help that you need to sort out this situation. And finally, we all said that everyone needs mandatory courses on mental health so that we can tackle these situations. And thank you to my wonderful group. It was a brilliant conversation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to our third story, Jesus.
Okay. We had the story of a teacher having an audition, get the job, but being pressured by her superior. And her superior said to her that she won the audition because of him, in order to spend the night with her. So she thought she did something wrong. She thought she was her fault. And at the end, when she realized the real situation, she needed help. She needed a psychologist to help her to go forward. So what first we talk about, that this is a very realistic situation. It's not an imaginative situation. It's real, and it happens everywhere. So which is really sad. And in order to prevent it, to get tools for that, we talk about the need to have a person, a neutral person, like a psychologist, to help in the first place. We need seminars, workshops to make the community aware of the problem and aware of the tools they have in hand to help. We need a safe space to deal with these situations. And also some places have policies for that, but not many. The majority of institutions don't have policies to deal with these problems. So all of us were agreed that one of the main things for the problem is to have written policies in order to access different tools to help. Oh, thank you to my group. I didn't have time enough to say thank you. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Esther.
Yeah, I had the same problem. We ended our session mid-sentence, but it was a really interesting conversation. We had the same story about the teacher being pressured into spending the night with her superior, and thinking that it was because of something she did. What we said, we talked about what we could do as bystanders and what we would recommend the victim to do. I think what was really important to recognize is that there's a tremendous risk for the victim to speak out or not, and that it can be very scary, and that we would help them to follow the procedure that were in place, or the policies in place, but also that we would help them support by gathering evidence to see that there's proof, so that when you go into the procedure, that something will actually happen, and also to help them to not let it go away. So we're suggested to go to the police, or maybe eventually also share it with media or social media, while recognizing that it can be pretty scary as well, and that it can also, that the victim can feel that it might backfire. And when it came to the tools that we saw that were relevant, we discussed a lot of different tools that we would like in your institutions, on curriculum, but the ones that are specific for this problem, for the problem that the story that we discussed, is that in general, more diversity in the institution would help to prevent these type of situations, because the culture would be different. Indeed, we talked about the importance of education and policies, and also about revising those policies, that not because you have them, they're okay, but that you should revise them from time to time and reflect on them. And the last thing that we discuss is whether as an institution or within an institution, we had space to develop this kind of awareness. And there was some critical note about one of the suggestions of the toolbox, which I really welcomed, and that's to open it up for more, to open the institution up for more part-time teachers. That increases diversity, but at the same time, you have to recognize the reality that if you are part-time and if you may be a freelancer, that you don't get the space to develop this kind of awareness if you just go in and out you don't get the recognition, maybe you don't have the financial situation to spend some extra time. So I thought that was interesting. So we liked a lot of the regulations and suggestions of the toolbox, but there was also one where we were a bit more critical. And I really like that we don't accept everything that's given to us. So thank you.
So thank you to all of our groups. And I think we can hear from what has been said that, there are obvious responses which engage our awareness and our ability to recognize these situations and to support people in appropriate ways, but that also having appropriate codes of conduct allow us to know what is appropriate and what is not, and that we remain attached to this notion of networks of care. So teachers supporting teachers, policies supporting victims, and that these policies are living policies. In other words, nothing is set in stone, that this is an ongoing conversation that makes sure that we are living the situations that come up and addressing them in real time. So I think this was a very fruitful engagement, and we see that the stories brought lots of different suggestions, which we want you to keep in mind when we will be formulating statements this afternoon. And we will return, since we're a little bit late here, we will return at 11:40 and go from the academy to the music profession and try to take this a step further before this afternoon when we get together and write our statements. So we will come back together at 11:40, and thank you all for your active participation.